Thank you for that. I feel like we should keep doing that. I am really excited to be here for this book, to talk to Anya, to get loads of Norwegian translation wrong. But first, I have the pleasure of introducing Anya, who became interested in the Witches of Vardø and the living folk tales of Norway while living in Norway. It was while visiting the style memorial of Vardø, a monument of instigation commemorating the unjust persecution of witches. Eventually, she became fascinated by the women who must sterilize sex, decided to find their stories. Now resident in Edinburgh, she's studying a PhD research student where she graduated with distinct by school back. She's working on a parent novel, which she has 2 women and 2 time periods of global unrest, upheaval. So please put your hands together for Anya Bergman. So I believe before we get started that you are going to launch us into the unsettling landscape of the reading.
Thank you so much, and thank you everyone for coming along. And thank you very much. And yes, so I'm going to read a very short piece, first of all, and it's going to introduce the character of Anna. So Anya Bergman has found herself exiled to the tiny island of Vardø up in the far corner of Norway. And she's quite a confident lady. She feels that this exile is unjustified, and she's trying to work out a way to get back to her privileged life. So, can you hear me all, everyone?
It's more to the live stream. We will need it.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Is that better? Super. Okay. Apologies. Oh yeah, that's better, isn't it? So off we go. I'm going to read a very short piece when Anna has already arrived at the fortress, and she encounters a character who plays a big part in the witch trials. I'm also going to apologise for any mispronunciations. We'll try our best. So, Anna is at this moment, she's come out of her prison house and she's wandering around the courtyard, and she's climbed up onto the fortress and she's looking at the landscape. So she's looking out at this wild sea, this desolate, bleak, Arctic landscape. There was a jagged finger of land pointing out into the sea, the sight of which made me shiver. I knew instinctively that this lonesome, windswept country was most likely the island's execution site. I looked beyond it, across the narrow strait of choppy sea between the island and the mainland on the other side. Heavy clouds were gathering in, with rain falling in sweeping lines from Varanger Peninsula on their way to Varanger Peninsula. Grey curtains concealed an unrevealed dolmen, the devil's domain. The witches go and meet the devil on dolmen, Henrik had told me in whispers the first night after I put my rosary out. The governor is determined to be rid of all witches in the north, she shook her head. Be careful, lady. I gave her a haughty laugh. What an ignorant creature she was to even imagine that I, Fru Anya Bergman, daughter of a king's physician and a king's prisoner, could ever be suspected of harm. I looked beyond the cornfields of the Roman mountains to vast adventures of the north. It was even more barren and wild than you could ever imagine. Where did our world end and hell begin? I placed a hand on my belly, feeling the heat rise within me, my heart a little panicked. Sensing a shadow by my side, I turned in fright to see a man who stood back with a starched white cloth around his neck. I knew immediately who he was, for the battle scar gave him away. I had been told the regional governor, Christopher Orney, had been one of your most loyal and brave commanders in this recent victorious war against the British. Even before his time in your armies, he had fought for your father and survived at least a decade of 30 years war with the kingdoms of Denmark and Sweden. As I looked at him under the leaden skies, Governor Warning stood with the height and strength of a young soldier, but his face was cracked with the life of death. The scar was a prominent feature, marking a white line from the tip of his eyebrow all down his left cheek to the tip of his chin. Brutalist, what are you doing up here? His voice was surprisingly soft, but he was looking at me with displeasure. His lack of formality or introduction insulting. I'm sure he intended it thus. I shall return to my house, I said, declining to keep any explanation. For I was good enough in his fortress walls. None had changed me up. Your prison house, Governor Warning clarified. You would do well to remember your status, Brutalist, as a king's prisoner under my jurisdiction, and not wander as you please. I was not under the impression that I denied the daily walk for my good health. Silence, woman. Did I ask for your opinion? Your rage boiled up inside. The rain swept in from the peninsula, cold and steamy, and I pulled the hood of my cape with my hand. Down you must go, Brutalist, he said, giving me a rough push towards the steps. I fairly stumbled down, but managed to regain my balance at the bottom. The governor was so close behind me, he stepped in the back of my pockets, as if with the intention of kicking me so I might break my neck, and all the while speaking into my back as if to himself. I was told it might be a problem, he said. I've been warned of your reputation of Varanger. Stafford of Thriller wrote to me and advised me I might be best of its scopes for I wrote from freedom your husband was an would be badly to retort. There's only clever things I can say to this governor, but I willed my mouth to stay closed. My situation is bad enough, and the idea of having one of those hideous riders fixed to my face, and I could pop into my mouth with one foot coming down was too abhorrent. I'd seen them on the faces of common women who displeased their husbands being scolded by the authorities in Copenhagen and Berlin. And these scolds were usually older women who said too much, as if they could not help but speak truth without care for consequences. I had been, as they, in my need to speak freely and confident of it, because I believed my privilege protected me, but it seemed in Vardø it did not. Forgive me, Governor, said his meek master, though I was taught to be diminished. The sky split then, the rain fell hard as I scurried towards my longhouse, nearly slipping and falling in the mud, feeling the most ignoble I had ever been in my entire life. As I clattered up to the doorway and turned to see the gardener still standing in the porch hut, arms crossed, but he was no longer looking at me. He was peering up into the rain, and as I followed his gaze, I saw the crows circling again, buffeted this way and that by the wind. I thought it an odd sight, indeed. The regional governor of Denmark watching the crows was something so much more significant than I heard. And the crow kneeling above, not running away from the rain in such scrutiny.
Thank you so much, Jan. I think I could feel everybody moving to that. You really plunge us into the very more regional. And I wanted to ask first, when we think of the European trans, we think often of Germany. We definitely England as well, and then of course the same trans to say. I don't think we normally think about Norway. And I wanted to ask, how did you discover these stories and what drew you to tell them?
Well, I'll take a sip of the image. Is that better? That's better. Right, cool. I was living in Norway. So I was living in Norway, and a friend of mine told me about the witch trials up in Denmark, and I was immediately interested because I've always been interested in the history of witch trials. And so I started looking into it, and I was really shocked to discover that not much had been written about it, apart from one Norwegian professor, Professor Williamson, who's written a lot on the history of witch trials in Norway. And as I looked into it, I began to discover how ferocious they were. And in fact, I believe Germany, central Germany, Switzerland, Scotland, and Norway are all kind of on a par per capita. So during the 17th century, there was in region about 3,000 people living in Denmark, and 100 were eventually executed for witchcraft. So I was drawn to investigating this story, and then I think the thing that really tripped me was I discovered that the real trial records still exist. And not only that, Netherlands had them translated into English, thank goodness. Because even my Norwegian friends were looking at me, oh, we can't translate that for you. So I was looking at all the trial records, and then I came across the actual testimony of those accused, and then I was hooked, because I was like, oh my God, I'm reading the words of women on trial 360 years ago, and all the trial records still exist of the 17th century. And you can also hear the voice of Anya in some of those trial records as well. So that was it, and I was.
I think it's really fascinating. I think this question comes up a lot when people who write historical fiction generally, particularly fiction where the characters only know what happened to most of them, or at least if you don't know the outcome, we know that they were in a pretty sticky situation. Is what do you feel in terms of responsibility and what relationship do you develop with these women, and to kind of trust them with to kind of give them voice in the present is a really tricky thing to do. How do you kind of balance that?
I think that was my biggest challenge, and I don't want to sound like pompous or anything, but it's really important to me. And one of the reasons Nicola met with me was she wanted to make trials and then sensationalize it. And her words were like, raise women's voices and tenderness. So I got this huge responsibility to not even to stay close to events. But that made it very difficult and very challenging to write the story as well, in a way that would engage the reader and not kind of put them in a very dark place for a long time. So my first draft was 500 pages, because I've done every single trial occurred between 1662 and 1653. And in that draft, I did catch like everybody, get all those women's voices. I mentioned almost women in the kind of fiction section. So, and then once I've done that, then I was okay, now I need to turn this into a story. So I think it was very important to make it clear that they weren't just in Wicca. They weren't, they consider themselves Christian, I mean, the Norwegian. So we've also got the Sami element as well, which is another part of the story. So yeah, they consider themselves Christians. But having said that, when you read some of the testimony at the time, we did also try to protect themselves maybe by talking a little bit about their habits. So that's what I was trying to tap into as well.
And I think that the witchcraft novels about witches, of which we are seeing an incredible renaissance, which I think is wonderful, often walk a really difficult line between wanting to make clear that these individuals are victims of kind of European genocide of state control, victims who were often expected to failed social safety nets, and we'll talk a little bit about the lives of fishermen and things throughout this, I think, but all sorts of these different or unlucky or wrongs of crime, combined with a knowledge of not only the traditions, religious and spiritual practices in indigenous groups, but also that sometimes in Testament there's no mentions of magical powers, things that are not quite Christian or don't seem quite Christian to us. And obviously, lots of them are attracted into torture, but I think that there is a kind of the novelist's pull towards magic and the reality of the trials is something that I think we navigate really elegantly. And I wanted to ask you a little bit about the moments where magic appears, without giving any spoilers away to anyone, and how it navigated fiction.
Well, I think it was, for me, up until the kind of final draft I wrote the book, it was pure historical, and it was heavy going. Some of you hear the previous drafts and talking about it. So it was heavy going, and I knew there was something missing. And I think I realized the moment to bring in a little bit of magic was to bring that magic in. So it's not, you know, three witches stirring a cauldron making spells. It was magic whereby, well, is it magic? Or is it just that Lauren's really good families? Is it magic, or, you know, does she kind of sense what's going to change? And so, you know, it does goes a bit kind of further than that, but there was a purpose to bringing in that kind of aspect of slightly, I would say, I was kind of inspired by Isabel Allende, the way she brings in magic realist elements into Latin American literature. So I was trying to kind of liberate the trauma of these women through the magic elements of purpose. Purposes. I was not in this purpose.
I think that's really useful. You are really the points of it breakthrough. You're really rooting for them to have some agency. Talking about agency and power in the novel, one of the things I absolutely love is the character of Anya, who we heard from just in your reading, who is a wonderfully morally brave character with so much attitude, just the most extraordinary, strong personality. She feels at times like a bright splash of colour on the border. I wanted to ask how you found your way into her voice.
Oh yeah, that was a really interesting experience actually, because in the previous drafts of the book, I mean, Anna was a super real character, and she was scapegoated, she was blamed for the witch panic. So when the appeal judge came in the summer, and, you know, by that stage, a lot of people had been already executed and to stake, but some of the people got, you know, pardoned, and everyone was blaming Anna Witches, where she made the children confess, and she made them seek out against their mothers. So it was very convenient to cast her as this kind of hysterical, litigious nutter. And I kind of went along with that. I was like, oh, yeah, she's a right bitch. And you know, and then I started thinking, hang on a second. You know, I'm kind of copying all this, what history has said, which is predominantly written by men, the trial records were saying, which was a male scribe. I said, now hang on, let's just have a look at her. Surely she might have looked that she was at risk. And even though she was not the first woman, I was looking at other cases, and there's a case in Bergen, who was accused of witchcraft about 80 years before. I mean, she's a she ended up, you know. So I thought, no, it was president. So I started then investigating the story, and I found her a fascinating figure. I also discovered that she had been, you know, the daughter physician. She had a lot of medical knowledge. She was helping them, their healing, and all that's true. And I also found out that she had chosen to stay behind in Bergen and help sick people during the plague. I thought, now, hang on, you know, she's, you know, you've been told a little bit the wrong story here. So, and then I was going through menopause as well. And I thought, let's make a menopausal. Menopause of protagonist. So you will notice, reading, if you know about menopause, that Roland is someone who got flushes there, and you know, she, you know, she won't get to this stage sometimes, and you just have to speak the truth, and that's what that would put into hot water. So yeah, I love her, but some readers hate her. Right? Like, she's a complex.
She really is, and I think that one of the things that is a real thread through this, which we can go from Anna's point of view, from the book's point of view, Maren's point of view, is this idea of the default position women in Norwegian society at the time, regardless of social family, is to be wives and mothers. And in some ways, all of your characters flow in and out of those states quite uneasily. There's no single character I can think of who's like, yep, I'm a mother and wife, and I think it's great, and I've got no infected feelings. So important you don't cast off any of the value of those things, but you bring them into question into how they're seen societally, into the fact that not enough trials, and all of the ideas of wanting children, not wanting children, wanting them, not being able to have them, kind of flow through your work. And I wanted to ask you, obviously history is written by mostly men at this period. How did you bring this kind of, how did you weave these threads of motherhood through? And were they kind of informed by the documents, were they informed by the experience of, your friends in life? Like, I'm very interested in motherhood and feelings in the book.
Yeah, I think it's very important to me that you show a real description of every kind of choice a woman decides to make. And I wanted to show that it's not just, people didn't just want to have children and be mothers. But being a mother could be an option in that environment. And well, I don't want to give the spoiler away, but it's certainly not the defining factor, I would say, maybe any of the main characters, and that was important to me. I thought it was also interesting that it's made a big point of in the trial testimony that mothers were selling their daughters to the devil, that it was this arrangement, the mother was having a relationship with the devil, and that the daughters then were with the devil, and so you had children as young as 8, or girls, not boys, being accused of witchcraft and convicted of witchcraft. So I thought that I wanted to create kind of a sense that these women were pushing against that defined them, and it was more about kind of community and the nuance of not just motherhood but gender as well. And hopefully,
I think you definitely have, and I think it's an historical book that asks really important questions about solidarity and women. And one of the things I wanted to ask is that you don't just bring in the viewpoints of Norwegian women who might have lots and lots of feelings about the community they're in and what they want to do with their lives. You also write about some who might be Norway and I believe beyond. And I wanted to ask a little bit about what was the experience for you about deciding to write about an Indigenous group and about their spiritual practices and how that evolves for you?
Yeah, I mean, I was really aware of the fact that I was really careful not to appropriate any of their culture, but I also felt that I had to include them in the story because the first people accused of witchcraft in 17th century Norway, was some and women, and that was in the early 7th century. So it all kicked off actually with those accusations. And most of the people accused were Norwegian women, but I think was some women of Sufis, but I think the Sami were just clever at hiding these, and they were able to survive in these really hard environments and being Christian, invaders or colonizers, coming up to these regions. So, but they were frightened of their practices and their religion. So, things like yoiking, they felt they were seen to the devil, and the Christians regarded the aurora borealis as kind of, spectral sights from the devil, whereas for some they were the spirits of the dead dancing in the sky. So I wanted to include some of the song's story, but I decided not to, I don't want to see their voice either. So I have some of the characters in it, and I also worked with a song sensitivity reader to make sure that I wasn't true up anyway. Yeah, I just thought it was very important to bring in that respect. And also the Norwegians were colonized as well by the Danish, so that's important to remember. The Norwegian in the world, the different social strata to reduce who's Danish, and she would have done, that I was going to say the British colonizing the Irish at that time.
Well, I think it's one of the things I love about this because there's really closely observed differences in social strata that exist between women who are all having almost an equally terrible time, but those differences are really precisely maintained. And I wanted to ask a little bit about the the way that you kind of write friendship and community is some of the central friendships and bring together really different people. And there's a lovely kind of band of misfits, moments, which give a real kind of joy and in the midst of dangers. And I wanted to ask those unlikely friendships and whether you felt that they could only exist outside the community, or if they also reflect the aspects of the communities that you.
I think kind of during my research, I was talking to, and she kind of gave me a sense that the community is so terrified of witchcraft accusations, and also that paranoia that you anything slightly untoward, and if your neighbour is being accused, and they were tortured in Norway, so God knows what's on also in the torture and when it pops up. So there must have been a lot of kind of paranoid mistrust, not much bonding, I think, between the community to a certain extent. So therefore, when Ingeborg's, not spoilers, but when Ingeborg's mother being accused that everyone kind of abandons her and her sister, and it's the only other outcast who's already an outcast, already who comes to their aid. It's the others, and then there's some vacancy about. So she finds herself, although wary of them, the only people who will help her,
And there are some wonderful explorations of Sami culture, first women. This kind of idea of who is able to navigate hands. And one of the things I think is really interesting is that you're resisting something and refusing to know it because you are afraid of it as being a really dangerous thing. The Sami, for example, can disappear into the landscape and live on seemingly kind of deeply hostile terrain because they know how to make sure the reindeer have enough food and they know how to survive. And then we have Anya's knowledge of herbs and medicine, so it's a real double-edged sword for her, although she's early life. And this feeling of leaning into knowledge as being the way to survive and a way to be condemned, especially for women. And I wanted to ask a little bit about that idea of forbidden knowledge, how you configure it in the book.
Gosh, what forbidden knowledge of the terrain, of the landscape, of I think that's when they get accused of turning into animals.
Yes. I was so excited.
The ruling government, the member of the island, when they could kind of explain women taking agency themselves as they actually became something evil, so they turned into kids, or they turned into birds. My God, they drank all the beer and dance, so that's enough to get you damage. So and that goes back into the history of Christianity. Let's say with these women, and I think a significant factor is that where you have these hotbeds of witch accusations at places of the new reform religion, so where you are considered to have responsibility for your own kind of Christian well-being, also women are very much considered the form of evil, temptation, but then they'll have that these let's say there's very few witch accusations in Ireland because they kind of believe in differences. So forbidden knowledge means power. What's interesting is that I did read that the women were literate, that I can't remember that, but with an Antonia, they were in Varanger, and who all her testimony recorded was able to read knowledge.
It really is the animal conservation, like animals interact with people generally that, but the take the government to reminds me of this about houses, such as also. And this idea of suspicion of anyone who even to animals, and the way animals behave, and the way animals look, kind of hysteria and suspicion that is not among women, but is among men. And you have a great line in men slowly losing their minds further in this book. That's some really chilling scenes of men being hysterical feeling. And I wanted to ask a little bit about the men in the book. Because they're not particularly charming bunch, are they? Sorry, very true. And the Scottish man,
Right, well, typically Scots exported witch hunts to Norway, so and touch on that a little bit.
yeah, he really loves tortured silence about yes.
But the animals and the men and the animals. So that's really interesting, that question actually, because when I was reading this testament, and the one that kept coming up again and again was that men were so frightened of being turned into birds. This is the main thing. Women were all these different birds, and then they would fly out to sea and they would land on ships, the merchants' ships, and they would cause them to wreck and lose all their money. So this was to do with this kind of fight between the Bergen merchants and the husbands of these fishermen as well. The fishermen, sorry, and the Bergen merchants would accuse the wives of witchcraft of fishermen. But when I went, so I went to Vardø twice, once in the for a start on this Lisbon site, I was like, okay, now I can see why they believe in the devil. But I went on the stuff, and it was as intense from broad daylight, right? But what was intense was the birds. Oh my God, non-stop screeching of Arctic terns going to the nesting cliffs, and just I suddenly realized, I thought, oh, those men just were freaked out by these screaming birds. And sounds like screaming women. So, yeah, I think the men were afraid of nature. It was a very wild place, and less understanding, I think, of that natural world and women, who were on the kind of nitty-gritty of survival, of fending for their families.
I'm really struck by what you said about the 24 hours of daylight being this intense, because I went and stayed on Orkney, and it's not quite as intense, but it never really gets dark. And I went a bit mad.
Yes, we do. I remember my first summer living in Norway. Oh my God, I went a bit demented. I couldn't sleep. I was used to that. I used to drinking at midnight. But first summer, I was like, this is worse than it. Like I couldn't sleep at all. And yeah, sleep deprivation. So yeah, very extreme, very intense. All the noises of the animals all night long. There's no peace.
And I think I'm just check the time.
Oh yeah,
okay, that's fine. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask a few more questions, and then I'm going to read this again.
Yes, I'll have to set this up.
And then we will take audience questions. If you have through it in your brain. But before we get to that, I wanted to ask you a little bit about how it feels now the book is in the world. Because you have these women on the series for a really long time, and now they're in other people's hands. And that must be kind of really strange experience.
To be honest, it's fantastic.
Good.
It's a long time. I think my poor long-suffering son was his. I can't, a poor thing had to listen to about issues. Longer, God, issues again. And I did kind of lose my mind. I really got into it so much that I didn't know it as I was in the witches' hall. I really went deep. So I felt like this, without getting some comments, I felt like I'd made this pleasure. I was really desperate that this story got out because I kind of promised them I'd do it. Something like that, but it's a relief to actually share the story. And what's really great is that people are responding to the story in the way I hoped they are, that they're seeing that, they're into the history, wanting about history, but also getting that it's a story about the power of these women as well. That's really important. The story shouldn't leave the reader in a dark place. It should leave you feeling basic that you want to say, down with patriarchy and go
What I want to ask a job was like for you, because the women, we know that, as you say, about 100 people it's highly community. Know that for many of the women in the story and beyond, the outcome is not positive. However, you've used that darkness to create really a very impactful. And I wanted to ask, A, how you did it, it's an incredible achievement, and B, what it kind of inspired within you.
Yeah, I think there was that point, as I say, when I brought in the magic realism, when I realised, because I was kind of in an awful pickle, I was like, I need to tell the truth, but it's just so wonderful. How do I engage people, the reader, and how do I bring people on a journey that feels that there's a positive resolution to certain stuff. And so it has changed the way I approach historical fiction. And I'm realising now I'm actually questioning everything. Okay, who's actually written this piece of documentation? What perspective is this? How can I kind of claw back a little bit of autonomy for this character, which is usually female in the past? And without us realising it, we have so many preconceptions about characters that we just assumed for generations and generations. So yeah, it has inspired me to do that.
Doing the much needed work of reclaiming history that people who are written about, who don't write themselves. Can I ask then, if we reach place that you're working on just now in that vein?
So I think, well, the working title is The Tarbuck. Set, and it's based on a real woman. At the side, but it also links what's going on in Ireland at the time, leading up to the Great Rebellion at the end of the 18th century, kind of this idea of linking and this fight for independence in both countries. It's looking at some female struggle figures in that period and kind of reappraising them. And yeah, I don't think I'll say any more. I
think that's a nice example. You reach out to them before we get to the seeds. Yeah, that's fabulous. Can you hear me okay? Super. So what I read is we were woven throughout the narrative of some folk tales, my own tales. These are like Norwegian folk tales, some Sami tales, some Norse mythology, Muslim my own invention. So I'm going to read you a folk tale, and it doesn't really matter that it's at the end of the book because it doesn't take away any thought. It's my favourite one. So it's called The Witch, the Lynx, and the Dark Lord. Once a witch lived the life of a serving girl or a cook, or a washerwoman, or a seamstress, or a weaponess, or a wife in a big castle on the rockiest island in the farthest north. In the first winter of her womanhood, she lay awake every night between two sleeps. The first sleep was the slumber her tired body needed after all her chores, including the private ones her master needed. But every night the moon would nudge her awake and the master slept on. Even if it was a tiny crescent of moon, even if it was dark,
She felt the pulse of noontime in her blood and bones, and she couldn't sleep. In the time of watching, she would get out of the big bed, with the flagstone floors cold in her bare feet, and she would look out of the castle window across the silver snow and towards the dark rolling sea. And she would hear its call, and with all her heart she wanted to slip out of the castle, though she did not know why. That intuition would always leave her heart, and she would sneak out of the bedroom, climb down the stone staircase, open the big hall door, and run outside. The witch, who did not know she was a witch, would wander along the shore, listening to the sea kisses that dropped upon the icy edge, watching the stream rise and silvery vapor in the night. And as she walked, she reflected upon her life. After a long distance, she would at last see tired and go home to the castle, and she would sneak in through the door, climb the stairs, and get back into her master's bed. Then she would take her second sleep for the nourishment of her soul. In the morning, she would be woken by the kicking of her master as he shoved her out into the warm sheets. Lay the fires, cook the porridge, wash my collars and my kerchief, mend my breeches through the baby, and be with handkerchief. The witch, who did not know she was a witch, would have been named serving cook, washerwoman, seamstress, wet and so on, wandered every night with wintry seas for the cycle of one whole moon. Under the rising margin of the 28th night, she felt her bleedings rival. The witch turned back to the castle where she might ease her cramps with a small glass of Genevieve sneaked out of her master's cellar. But right in front of her was a lynx. She gasped in shock. Where had it come from? It had snuck up on her so silently. The lynx flicked its tail at her and stared knowing eyes of gold, and the witch, who didn't know she was a witch, stayed very still with the blood dripped from between her legs. Drip, drip, drip onto the snow. The lynx slipped towards her, and the witch pressed her hands to her heart, for she believed it to be her last moment on earth. The lynx was so close now she felt its hot breath upon her bare hands, and she waited to feel its teeth sink into her. To her surprise, the lynx licked her hands with a rough tongue, and then it nudged her aside. She stumbled back, and the lynx bowed before her with deep feline stretches of grace, and then the lynx lay down and rolled in the witch's menstrual blood, which had spattered the snow. When the lynx had finished, she rolled back up, white and fawn fur stained with dark spots of rust brown. The witch, who did not know she was a witch, looked into the lynx's eyes. Why did you cover yourself in my blood? Because I am part of you. I am your spirit guide and aim for me. The witch, who did not know she was a witch, was filled with wonder and awe. She began to think, I am more than a cook, more than a servant girl, more than a washerwoman, more than a seamstress, more than a wet nurse, and more than a wife. She went about her chores as usual, but inside her was a big voice singing all day. One more. Maybe the lord of the castle noticed the witch was different, because the next morning he grabbed her by the elbow. Where do you go at night? You believe I sleep, but I've heard you, he accused her. The slow lift of the latch in my chamber and the slam of the hall door was gone. I look out of the window, but I can see you nowhere. Even beneath the full moon, you were gone. The lord of the castle dug his fingernails into the witch's skin, but I see you in my head, running to the dark sea. Whom do you meet? What witchery says? Do you have sex with the devil? The witch told her master she hadn't left his head. I asked you again, who do you meet? For I can smell the sea of you, see the polyps tangled in your hair with the light of my fingertips. You know more than I, but I will not have it. The witch refused to tell him anything because she didn't want the lord of the castle to hunt and kill the lynx. So instead, the master wrote the witch to tell me in secrets, he said, twisting the witch's arm behind her back. Even when he heard the snap of her bone, the master did not stop. The witch cried in pain, but he believed her tears were false. Every time he looked in the witch's eyes, he felt terror and a fist in his belly. He crushed the witch's thumbs, but still she did not confess. Her screams reached the lynx far to the east in woods near Russia, and she arched her back in agony and hissed sparks of courage into the witch. It took 7 days for her master to beat what he saw as evil out of the witch, the woman. He made her say with her bloody bruised lips spat out the words, I am a witch. You gave to the devil what you wouldn't give to me, a masterpiece of which you have my body, my loyalty, and my whole life in your hands, which was the fact that you came from the constant bloodstones. But you have never given me your consent, the monster said. The witch looked up at her tall lord and monster with fastened blue skin and bone bleached. He was strong and humble, but she was not afraid. She felt the lynx's level stone in her arm, and she saw him flinch as if she'd stabbed a blade into his flesh. It is my duty to watch you burn, he whispered, dropping his hand in shame. And so it was the witch's youth, her beauty and her wisdom were taken away by the dark lord, her ashes flaring above the deepest snow of the winter. But the witch never dies, because she lives in you, and she lives in me. If you ever forget, close your eyes, and you will see a magnificent lynx running for all eternity, spattered with witch's blood.
I don't know how we're going to follow. If anyone has any questions.
I just wanted to say, actually, that passage that I read, I'm doing the same, was actually the first piece this draft of the book I wrote, and I wrote it in Brenavia. Some of you will recognise its essence, so yeah, give it a shot.
What the evolution?
Yes,
Into this. So, yes.
Unrelated. You have gone through kind of an evolution in the linguistic innovation book and experimenting, going quite experimental, and also balancing like the historical register with still being accessible to the modern commercial audience. Can you talk about the journey?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, so one of the versions I liked for the characters, well, I actually do this in English. Mara invented a whole first person section with all of her dialect, and it was beautiful in prose. It was, but it was like it's too difficult for people to understand. And so it was quite a challenge to negotiate the 17th century, but also to bring in those elements, those linguistic elements and rhythm. So I kind of did it through the rhythm of the language. There's also a glossary academic names. I also try to keep up to speed registers with different characters. There's so many families can really speak to me. And kind of snappy thing. But for the others, it was a challenge. So yeah, it was a very interesting journey to get that balance. And I think it's why I enjoyed the folk tales as well, because I was able to take this out of voices narrative voice, the folk tale voice. Thank you. Thank you, Alice. Oh.
There's something
So just for the live stream, that was the question about the illustration of the cover in there.
So I actually didn't have anything to say. I mean, I was the person who created the cover. I love the cover, I think it's brilliant. That would actually be a question for the artist of the cover. I think, and I'm just guessing, that they were inspired by broadsheets of the period. So if you look at broadsheets written around that time, you know, the font would have been very similar. There was a very famous broadsheet called News from Scotland, which some of you might be aware of, which has a similar kind of typeface and telling stories of the varied witch trials with illustrations. So I think that's where the idea came from, to kind of evoke that sense of the 17th century sheet. Great question, thank you. Thank you so much. Alice, for just a couple more questions.
There is one online.
Oh,
So I can
perfect.
give you So Tanner asks, it feels like we're having a bit of a witchy moment. Why do you think we're so drawn back to this period and these women just now?
Brilliant. Great question, Sam. Thank you. Well, I think it's not a witchy moment. I think it's witchy lit is here to stay. I think it's part of the whole movement of feminist retellings or retellings history, not just feminist retellings, retelling of history, looking at the situation of women and other people who have their stories told. So I think historical fiction is going through a huge transformation that we're choosing to tell stories not from that kind of perspective and kind of overturning or flipping assumptions. In regards to witch lit, it's really interesting because what's popular now covers 4 genres. You've got non-fiction books like In Defense of Witches, and The Room Witches being really big and best-selling, so people want to read the real history. We've got retellings of witch trials like my book and Anya Witches. We've also got, it's going into fantasy genre as well, dark academia, wellness books, your book as well, which is all about healing and nature and tapping into witches and you know how to bring that into your life. And I think it's key, it's kind of tapping into this idea of you know, reclaiming ourselves, connecting into the kind of part of us that is wants to speak out and be rebel, because there's certain very distinct things going on in the world right now. People's rights are being shrunk. We're all feeling there's bigger and bigger gaps in privilege between those in power and those not. So I think it's part of all of that. I think you can trace that with Witchlit. The beginnings of it was very much connected with the Me Too movement, but it's now kind of rolled out. So
There's a Witchlit thing what
yeah,
that's really
yeah.
And I don't know about but I've been through so many unprecedented one-off questions. And when people really have this current which is really, so I think that our inner links are being, we're seeking our inner links.
I think so. We kind of know the old ways aren't working. We know this. It's just hard to budge those people out from the top, isn't it? I mean, Mona Shelley had a really interesting point as well about how it connects to climate crisis, which I think also really interesting, and that which literature shows a different way of connecting to nature. So I thought that was another interesting point.
And I think that that was something that does beauty as that was experience. So conscious of the time, I think we are going to move now to Anya is very kindly going to do a signing for us. Just in front of your directory, so you may not be able to see, there is a beautiful signing table, and you can purchase copies of the Witches of Vardø. Run, don't walk, but in a safe and in a separate way to the bookstore. Thank you so much for this example giving this wonderful space. And thank you for being such a fantastic audience and for those lovely questions. And would you all please bring in some information?
Thank you. Thank you, Ali.